The millionaire stepped out of his car, the gravel crunching under his polished shoes. He wasn't supposed to be home this early. His business trip had ended ahead of schedule, and he decided to surprise his wife. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that felt heavy, like the air was holding its breath. He walked up the steps, his hand brushing against the cold iron railing, and pushed the front door open. The sound of his wife's voice stopped him in his tracks. She was speaking in a low, urgent whisper, the kind of tone that made his stomach twist. He couldn't make out the words, but something about it felt wrong. He moved closer, careful not to make a sound, and pressed himself against the wall just outside the kitchen. "I already put poison in his drink," she said, her voice trembling. "It's done." The millionaire's heart skipped a beat. His breath caught in his throat, and for a moment, he felt like the ground had disappeared beneath him. Poison? In his drink? He replayed her words in his mind, trying to make sense of them. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake. He leaned closer, straining to hear more. His wife was silent for a moment, and then she spoke again. "They'll be here soon. Make sure everything is ready." They? Who were they? The millionaire's mind raced. He had no idea what was going on, but one thing was clear, his life was in danger. He felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead, his hands clenching into fists. He wanted to burst into the kitchen and demand answers, but something held him back. If he confronted her now, he might never find out the truth. He stayed hidden, listening as his wife ended the call. He heard her footsteps moving toward the living room, and he quickly slipped into the hallway, out of sight. His mind was a whirlwind of questions. Why would she do this? What had he done to deserve this? And who were these people she was working with? The millionaire retreated to his study, his heart pounding in his chest. He needed to think, to figure out what was going on. He sat down at his desk, his hands shaking as he opened his laptop. He didn't know where to start, but he knew one thing: he couldn't trust anyone. Not even his wife. As he stared at the screen, a thought occurred to him. Maybe this wasn't about him. Maybe it was about something bigger, something he didn't even know about. He thought back to the past few months, trying to remember anything unusual. Had there been signs? Had he missed something? The sound of a car pulling into the driveway snapped him out of his thoughts. He stood up and peeked through the window, his heart racing. A black SUV had parked outside, and two men in dark suits were getting out. They looked serious, dangerous even. The millionaire's stomach churned. He didn't know who they were, but he knew one thing: he couldn't let them find him. He grabbed his phone and a few essentials, his mind racing with plans. He needed to get out of the house, to find a safe place where he could think. But more than that, he needed answers. Who were these people? What did they want from him? And why had his wife betrayed him? As he slipped out the back door, the millionaire made a silent promise to himself. He would uncover the truth, no matter what it took. And if his wife had truly turned against him, he would make sure she regretted it. The night air was cool against his skin as he disappeared into the shadows, his mind already working on a plan. This was just the beginning, and he had no idea what was coming next. But one thing was certain: his life would never be the same again. The millionaire sat in a dimly lit motel room, the faint hum of the air conditioner the only sound breaking the silence. He had been on the run for 2 days, moving from one place to another, always looking over his shoulder. The events of that night played over and over in his mind like a broken record. His wife's voice, the poison, the men in the black SUV, it all felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. But he knew it was real. And he knew he had to find out why. He opened his laptop, the glow of the screen casting shadows on the walls. He had spent hours searching for anything that could explain what was happening. At first, he found nothing. His wife's life seemed ordinary, just as he had always known it to be. But then, he stumbled upon something, a name he didn't recognize, linked to an old news article from years ago. The article was about a secretive organization that had been involved in corporate espionage and illegal experiments. The details were vague, but one name stood out: Project Elysium. The millionaire frowned. He had never heard of it before, but something about it felt familiar. He dug deeper, searching for any connection to his wife. Hours passed, and the pieces began to come together. He found old photos of his wife from before they met, photos he had never seen before. In them, she looked different, harder, colder. She was standing with a group of people, all dressed in lab coats, in front of a building he didn't recognize. The caption beneath the photo read, "Research Team, Project Elysium, 2005. The millionaire's heart sank. His wife had been part of this organization. But why had she never told him? And what did it have to do with him? He kept searching, his fingers flying over the keyboard. He found more documents, more photos, and more names. One name kept appearing, a man who seemed to be the leader of the organization. The millionaire didn't recognize him, but he felt a chill run down his spine as he read about the man's involvement in illegal activities and his ruthless methods. As he pieced together the information, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The organization had been experimenting with mind control and manipulation, using wealthy and influential people as their test subjects. The millionaire's stomach turned as he realized the truth: he had been one of them. He thought back to the early days of his career, when everything had seemed to fall into place so easily. He had always thought it was his hard work and determination that had brought him success. But now, he wondered if it had all been part of a plan. Had the organization been pulling the strings all along? The millionaire leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. If the organization had been controlling him, why had his wife turned against them? And why had she tried to poison him? None of it made sense. He needed answers, and he knew there was only one way to get them. He had to confront his wife. But first, he needed to find her. He closed his laptop and stood up, his resolve hardening. He didn't know what he would find, but he knew he couldn't stop now. The truth was out there, and he was going to uncover it, no matter the cost. As he stepped out of the motel room and into the night, the millionaire felt a strange sense of determination. He had spent his life building an empire, but now, he was fighting for something much more important: his freedom. And he wouldn't stop until he had it. The millionaire walked down the quiet street, his collar pulled up against the cold night air. He had left the motel behind, determined to find answers. But where to start? He didn't know where his wife was, or even if she was still alive. All he had were questions, and no one to answer them. As he turned a corner, he noticed a figure standing under a streetlight. The man was tall, with a long coat and a hat pulled low over his face. He seemed to be waiting for something, or someone. The millionaire hesitated, his instincts telling him to avoid strangers. But something about the man caught his attention. There was an air of mystery about him, a sense that he knew more than he let on. Before the millionaire could decide what to do, the man spoke. "You're looking for answers," he said, his voice low and calm. "I can help you." The millionaire froze. How did this man know what he was looking for? Was he part of the organization? Or was he something else entirely? He took a cautious step forward, his eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" he asked. The man smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "Let's just say I'm someone who knows what you're up against. And I know you can't do this alone." The millionaire's mind raced. He didn't trust this man, but he also knew he was running out of options. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want to see the organization fall," the man replied. "And you're the key to making that happen." The millionaire frowned. "Me? Why me?" The man stepped closer, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Because you're one of their experiments." They've been controlling you for years, shaping your life, your decisions, everything. But now, you're starting to break free. And that makes you dangerous to them. The words hit the millionaire like a punch to the gut. He had suspected as much, but hearing it out loud made it feel all too real. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "What do you know about my wife?" he asked. The man's expression softened slightly. "She's not your enemy," he said. "She's been trying to protect you. The poison, it wasn't meant to kill you. It was a test, to see if you were still under their control." The millionaire stared at him, trying to process what he was hearing. "A test?" he repeated. "What are you talking about?" The man reached into his coat and pulled out a small device. It looked like a USB drive, but there was something strange about it, something high-tech. "This contains everything you need to know," he said, holding it out. "But be careful. Once you open it, there's no going back." The millionaire hesitated, then took the device. It felt cold in his hand, heavier than it looked. "Why are you helping me?" he asked. The man's smile returned, but this time, there was a hint of sadness in it. "Let's just say I have my reasons," he said. "But remember this, you're not alone. There are others like you, others who have escaped the organization's control. Find them. Together, you might stand a chance." Before the millionaire could ask any more questions, the man turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows. The millionaire stood there for a moment, clutching the device in his hand. He didn't know what to think, but one thing was clear: he was deeper in this than he had ever imagined. He found a nearby cafe and sat down at a corner table, his hands trembling as he plugged the device into his laptop. The screen flickered, and then a series of files appeared. He opened the first one, and his heart sank as he began to read. The files contained detailed information about the organization, its members, its experiments, its plans. There were names, dates, locations, and even photos. The millionaire recognized some of the faces, people he had done business with, people he had trusted. But the most shocking thing was the file about him. It was all there, every decision he had made, every success he had achieved, all carefully orchestrated by the organization. They had been watching him, controlling him, for years. And now, they saw him as a threat. The millionaire closed his laptop, his mind reeling. He didn't know what to do next, but he knew one thing: he couldn't do this alone. He needed to find the others, the ones the stranger had mentioned. And he needed to find his wife. As he stepped out of the cafe and into the night, the millionaire felt a strange sense of determination. He had spent his life building an empire, but now, he was fighting for something much more important: his freedom. And he wouldn't stop until he had it. The millionaire sat in the corner of a small, run-down library, his laptop open in front of him. The device the stranger had given him was plugged in, and the files it contained were spread across the screen. He had been reading for hours, his eyes growing heavy, but he couldn't stop. Every file, every document, revealed more about the organization and its sinister plans. One file, in particular, caught his attention. It was labeled Project Elysium, Phase 3. He opened it, and his heart sank as he began to read. The file detailed the organization's ultimate goal: a global takeover using mind control and manipulation. They had been experimenting on wealthy and influential people, turning them into puppets to carry out their plans. The millionaire scrolled through the document, his hands trembling. There were names of people he knew, CEOs, politicians, even celebrities. All of them had been part of the organization's experiments. And then he saw his own name. According to the file, he had been one of their most successful subjects. They had manipulated his decisions, his relationships, even his marriage. His wife had been part of the plan, assigned to keep him under control. But something had changed. She had started to question the organization, to resist their orders. That was why she had tried to warn him. The millionaire leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and fear. How could he have been so blind? How could he not have seen what was happening? But deep down, he knew the answer. The organization was too powerful, too cunning. They had been one step ahead of him all along. He closed his eyes, trying to calm his thoughts. He needed to focus. He needed a plan. But first, he needed to understand the full extent of what he was up against. He opened another file, this one labeled Safe Houses and Allies. It contained a list of locations and names, people who had escaped the organization's control and were now in hiding. The millionaire's heart raced as he scanned the list. These were the people the stranger had mentioned, the ones who could help him. He quickly wrote down the addresses and names, his hands shaking with excitement. This was his chance. If he could find these people, if he could unite them, maybe they could take down the organization together. But as he was about to close the file, something caught his eye. At the bottom of the list was a note, "Beware of traitors. Not everyone can be trusted." The millionaire frowned. What did that mean? Were there people on this list who were still loyal to the organization? He didn't know, but he couldn't let that stop him. He had to take the risk. He packed up his laptop and left the library, the list of safe houses and allies tucked safely in his pocket. He didn't know where to start, but he knew he had to move quickly. The organization would be looking for him, and he couldn't afford to be caught. As he walked down the street, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. He thought about his wife, about the life they had built together. Had any of it been real? Or had it all been part of the organization's plan? He didn't know, but he was determined to find out. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the list, looking at the first name on it. It was a woman, someone he had never heard of before. But according to the file, she had been one of the organization's first subjects, and she had managed to escape. She was living in a small town a few hours away. The millionaire took a deep breath and hailed a taxi. He didn't know what he would find when he got there, but he knew one thing: he couldn't do this alone. He needed allies. And he needed to find his wife. As the taxi pulled away, the millionaire felt a strange sense of determination. He had spent his life building an empire, but now, he was fighting for something much more important, his freedom. And he wouldn't stop until he had it. The taxi pulled into a quiet, small town just as the sun was beginning to rise. The millionaire stepped out, his eyes scanning the empty streets. According to the list, the woman he was looking for lived here. Her name was Clara, and she had been one of the organization's first subjects. If anyone could help him, it was her. He walked down the main street, his footsteps echoing in the early morning silence. The town was quaint, with small shops and cozy houses. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers stood out. The millionaire kept his head down, trying to avoid drawing attention to himself. He found Clara's house at the end of a narrow lane. It was a small, white cottage with a garden full of flowers. The millionaire hesitated for a moment, then knocked on the door. There was no answer. He knocked again, louder this time, and waited. Finally, the door creaked open, and a woman peered out. She was in her late 50s, with graying hair and sharp, intelligent eyes. She looked at the millionaire suspiciously. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name doesn't matter," the millionaire replied. "I need your help. I'm trying to stop the organization." The woman's eyes widened, and she quickly glanced up and down the street. "Come in," she said, stepping aside. The millionaire followed her into the house, which was warm and inviting. Clara led him to the kitchen and gestured for him to sit down. "How did you find me?" she asked. "I was given a list of people who escaped the organization," the millionaire explained. "Your name was on it." Clara nodded slowly, her expression grim. "I've been hiding here for years," she said. "I thought I was safe. But if they know you're here, they'll come for me too." "I'm sorry," the millionaire said. "I didn't mean to put you in danger. But I need your help. I need to understand what they're planning." Clara sighed and sat down across from him. "What do you know so far?" she asked. The millionaire told her everything, about the device, the files, his wife, and the organization's experiments. Clara listened intently, her face growing darker with each word. "They've gotten bolder," she said when he finished. "When I was part of their experiments, they were just starting. But now, it sounds like they're ready to make their move." "What can we do?" the millionaire asked. Clara leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. "We need to find the others on your list. Together, we might stand a chance. But we have to move quickly. If the organization knows you're looking for us, they'll try to stop you." The millionaire nodded. "Where do we start?" Clara stood up and went to a drawer, pulling out a map. She spread it on the table and pointed to a location a few hours away. "There's a man here," she said. "His name is Victor. He was one of their top scientists. If anyone knows how to stop them, it's him." The millionaire studied the map, his mind racing. "How do we get to him?" he asked. "We'll have to be careful," Clara said. "The organization will be watching. But if we move fast and stay under the radar, we might be able to reach him before they do." The millionaire nodded, feeling a surge of hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, he felt like he had a real chance. "Let's go," he said. Clara packed a few essentials, and they left the house, heading for the car she kept hidden in the garage. As they drove out of town, the millionaire couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He kept glancing in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see a black SUV following them. But the road behind them was empty. For now. The drive to Victor's location was tense. Clara kept her eyes on the road, her hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. The millionaire sat in the passenger seat, his mind racing with questions. What would they find when they reached Victor? Would he even be willing to help them? And what if the organization was already one step ahead? After hours of driving, they arrived at a remote area surrounded by dense forest. Clara parked the car in a hidden spot and turned to the millionaire. "We'll have to go the rest of the way on foot," she said. "Victor's hiding in an old research facility deep in the woods. It's abandoned, but he's been using it as a safe house." The millionaire nodded, his heart pounding. He followed Clara as she led the way through the trees, the forest growing darker and quieter with every step. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the only sound was the crunch of leaves under their feet. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the facility. It was a large, crumbling building, its windows broken and its walls covered in ivy. It looked like it had been abandoned for years, but the millionaire could feel a strange energy coming from it, as if it was still alive in some way. Clara approached the entrance cautiously, her eyes scanning the area. "Stay close," she whispered. "We don't know what we'll find inside." They stepped through the broken doors and into the facility. The interior was dark and damp, with water dripping from the ceiling and the smell of mildew in the air. The millionaire's flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing empty hallways and rusted equipment. As they moved deeper into the facility, they began to hear faint noises, whispers, footsteps, the sound of machinery. The millionaire's heart raced. Was someone else here? Or was it just his imagination? Suddenly, a voice echoed through the hallway. "Stop right there." The millionaire and Clara froze. A man stepped out of the shadows, his face illuminated by the beam of their flashlight. He was tall and thin, with glasses and a stern expression. In his hand, he held a gun. "Victor," Clara said, her voice calm but firm. "It's me, Clara. We're here to help." Victor lowered the gun slightly, his eyes narrowing. Clara? What are you doing here? And who's this? He gestured to the millionaire. He's one of us, Clara said. He's trying to stop the organization. We need your help. Victor studied them for a moment, then sighed and lowered the gun completely. You shouldn't have come here, he said. It's not safe. They're watching this place. We know, the millionaire said. But we don't have a choice. We need to understand what they're planning. And we need to find my wife. Victor's expression softened. Your wife, she's one of theirs, isn't she? The millionaire nodded. But she tried to warn me. She's not on their side anymore. Victor sighed again and gestured for them to follow him. Come on. I'll show you what I've found. He led them to a small room filled with computers and monitors. The screens were covered in lines of code and diagrams, all of it incomprehensible to the millionaire. Victor sat down at one of the computers and began typing. I've been monitoring their communications, he said. They're planning something big. Something that could change the world forever. What is it? Clara asked. Victor turned to them, his face grave. They've developed a new technology, a way to control people's minds on a massive scale. They're planning to use it to take over governments, corporations, everything. And they're almost ready to launch it. The millionaire felt a chill run down his spine. How do we stop them? Victor hesitated, then pulled up a map on one of the screens. There's a central facility where they're keeping all the data and equipment. If we can destroy it, we might be able to stop them. But it's heavily guarded. Getting in won't be easy. The millionaire stared at the map, his mind racing. Where is it? Victor zoomed in on a location. Here. It's hidden underground, beneath a fake company headquarters. But if we can get inside, we might have a chance. Clara leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. Then that's where we go. The millionaire nodded, feeling a surge of resolve. He didn't know if they could pull this off, but he knew they had to try. For his wife. For everyone the organization had hurt. And for the future of the world. Let's do it, he said. The millionaire stared at the map, his mind racing. Where is it? Victor zoomed in on a location. Here. It's hidden underground, beneath a fake company headquarters. But if we can get inside, we might have a chance. Clara leaned forward, her eyes burning with determination. Then that's where we go. The millionaire nodded, feeling a surge of resolve. He didn't know if they could pull this off, but he knew they had to try. For his wife. For everyone the organization had hurt. And for the future of the world. Let's do it, he said. Over the next few days, they worked tirelessly, gathering information and preparing for the mission. The millionaire felt a renewed sense of purpose, a fire burning inside him. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for his wife, for Clara, for Victor, and for everyone the organization had hurt. Finally, the day came. They set out for the facility, their hearts pounding with anticipation. The mission was dangerous, but they were ready. They moved quickly and quietly, using everything they had learned to outsmart the guards and infiltrate the facility. When they found the millionaire's wife, she was weak but alive. Her eyes lit up when she saw him, and she threw her arms around him, tears streaming down her face. I knew you'd come, she whispered. The millionaire held her tightly, his own eyes filling with tears. I'll never leave you again, he promised. They escaped the facility together, their bond stronger than ever. As they drove away, the millionaire felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. They had faced the darkness and come out on the other side. The lesson. In the weeks that followed, the millionaire and his wife worked with Clara and Victor to expose the organization's crimes to the world. It wasn't easy, and there were many challenges along the way, but they never gave up. They knew that true strength came from standing together and fighting for what was right. As the millionaire reflected on everything that had happened, he realized that he had learned a valuable lesson. True wealth wasn't about money or power. It was about love, trust, and the courage to stand up for what mattered most. He looked at his wife, at Clara, at Victor, and felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had been through hell together, but they had come out stronger. And as they looked to the future, they knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The final lesson was clear: in the face of darkness, humanity's greatest strength is its ability to choose light.